First Layer. The first layer, also known as the Edge of the Abyss, sits 1,350 meters below the surface. It's basically the shallow end of the world's most terrifying pit. Compared to the nightmare fuel that waits further below, this area is relatively chill. In fact, it's the only part of the abyss that could be even remotely called safe. The abyss curse here is more of a gentle slap than a full-on gut punch. Think dizziness and a bit of nausea, like you spun around too fast or rode the teacups after a burrito. Most delvers make their descent through the official entrance, which is the gate to the netherworld. But of course, there's always the shady route where you can sneak in through the wharf without drawing too much attention, and maybe skip the paperwork. Right above it all is the town of Orth, kind of like the abyss's welcome mat. To help with the descent, there's a gondola system built into the Grand Pier, which lowers people down about 580 meters. Takes you pretty close to a rocky outcropping known as the Stone Arc, around 600 meters deep. At about 300 meters down, there's something called the Burial Tower, where you'll find hundreds of skeletons dating back anywhere from 2,000 to 6,000 years. They're all posed with their hands clasped like they were praying when they died. Now, the environment in this layer doesn't really shift all that much. It keeps a soft perpetual sunset vibe in terms of lighting, which is oddly peaceful. Wildlife here is mostly harmless. You got creatures like Demonfish and Hammerbeaks floating or flapping around doing their thing. There's also the Silk Fang, which is slightly less cute since it spits poison that can paralyze you. But occasionally, predators from deeper levels wander up here looking for a snack. That includes monsters like the Crimson Splitjaw and the Sakawatari. As for loot, don't expect to get rich here. Most of the artifacts you'll find are pretty meh, 3rd or 4th grade. But hey, some are weird enough to be cool. There's the Princess Bosom, also known as the Boob Stone, because it's soft and squishy like, you know. There's the Rock Top, which floats and shapeshifts when spun. Then you got the Star Compass, which always points to the abyss, like a creepy little GPS. And then the Sun Spear, which emits a bright light when activated. Because it's relatively low risk, this layer is kind of a training ground for rookie delvers or red whistles. They come here to cut their teeth, search for artifact, and hopefully not get eaten. One major event that went down here is this is where Reg was first discovered by Rico. After using his incinerator to rescue her from a wandering Crimson Splitjaw, Reg passed out, and Rico dragged him back to the Belchero orphanage. Around 250 years ago, someone discovered a sealed envelope in the first layer containing some ultra-rare high-level abyss knowledge allegedly from the 7th layer. Aside from the gate, the gondola, the burial tower, the stone arc, and the abode of trees and fossils where Rico first bumped into Reg, other notable locations in the first layer include the Guiding Tree, Omanaki Falls, Seat of the Waterfall, Stargazing Hill, Twisting Crag, and Wuthering Windmill. So yeah, the edge of the abyss is where things start. It's deceptively calm, sprinkled with ancient mysteries, weird wildlife, beginner-friendly loot, and just enough danger to keep things interesting. Second layer. The second layer of the abyss, also known as the Forest of Temptation, sounds kind of enchanting, but don't be fooled. This is where the abyss stops playing nice and starts showing its teeth. We're talking full-on nightmare jungle, 2,600 meters beneath the first layer, and miles away from anything resembling mercy. This layer is a game changer. The moment delvers cross into it, the curse of the abyss goes from mild motion sickness to your limbs go numb while you puke your guts out. Headaches, intense nausea, and that oh-so-pleasant pins and needles feeling all kick in when you try to ascend. Basically, once you go down here, going back up isn't really an option unless you're tough as nails, or you have a death wish. And speaking of death wishes, if a red whistle somehow ends up down here, the higher-ups don't even bother to send a search party. It's instantly marked as a suicide mission. That's how harsh the abyss gets, this early on. The landscape here does a hard pivot, from the first layer's soft lighting and gentle terrain to rainforest with insanely huge vegetation. Giant lily pad-like plants dominate the upper half of the forest. These monster plants are massive enough to provide shelter, but also block your view, making navigation a confusing mess. Thankfully, their branches always point towards the abyss's center, so if you get turned around, you can use those as a natural compass. There's also amagiri sprouts growing along their stems, which are handy navigation tools for lost delvers. And then there's the inverted forest, which is as wild as it sounds. This area is dominated by powerful updrafts and wind currents that are so strong they turn the whole ecosystem upside down. Literally, water flows upwards, trees hang from the ceiling. Platforms flow in weird patterns, and you gotta jump across them like a deranged obstacle course. The force field, the thing responsible for the curse, is actually weaker here, which means two things. It's darker and colder, and slightly less cursy, which is nice, relatively speaking. Because of the milder force field, delvers have built a resting station here in a massive tree called the Giant Porta Tree. This became Seeker Camp, run by none other than the White Whistle legend herself, Ozin the Immovable. Her crew, the Subterranean Bandits, hold things down from there and offer a rare, safe-ish zone in this otherwise cursed green hell. Now, let's talk wildlife, and not the cute kind. The second layer is crawling with monsters that feel like they crawled straight out of someone's worst dreams. You've got the Corpse Weepers, which literally mimic the cries of their victims to lure in rescuers, only to devour them too. Then there's the Embios, gibbon-like beasts that are super territorial and absolutely not afraid to throw down. Next up, Autobots, giant hippopotamus-like human-swallowing horrors. And don't forget the Yurikori, those flying scavengers with long fleshy tongues they use to strip flesh from bone like they're unwrapping candy. In terms of loot, the Forest of Temptation actually holds some serious first-grade artifacts. One of the most infamous is the Curse Warding Box. Early delvers thought that this thing could nullify the curse if you got inside it. Except that's not what it does. It doesn't protect you from anything. The person inside still suffers the curse, and often dies, but then comes back to life, only to beeline towards the Abyss's center before dying again. Riko's the only known exception to this twisted miracle because she lived, somehow. Another hot item is the 1,000 Men's Pins. These tiny little needles supposedly give you the strength of 1,000 men per pin when stabbed into your body. Ozin is rumored to have around 120 lodged in her flesh. That would definitely explain why she can toss boulders around like beach balls. Outside the inverted forest, you'll find other eerie-sounding points of interest, like Heaven's Waterfall, Rohana's Fountainhead, Sleeping Bed of Mushrooms, and the Wind-Riding Windmills. And just to make things even more fun, there's also a mysterious virus lurking in this layer, the Tachikiri fever. It's a nasty unknown disease that can wreck delvers. Thankfully, Blue Whistle delvers and above get vaccinated for it before coming down, so at least there's some protection from that particular horror. Third layer. Welcome to the third layer of the Abyss, also known by its super inviting name, the Great Vault. If you thought that the second layer was bad with its upside down forest and monster birds, the third layer basically goes, hold my Barakocha fruit. This place is basically a narrow, terrifying 4-kilometer deep vertical shaft, a massive dark gorge that drops straight down into the unknown. Unlike the relatively spacious layers above, this shaft is tight. Like if you have claustrophobia, maybe just stay in Orth. According to the Abyss map, this layer has one of the narrowest diameters in the entire Abyss structure. Now, descending the Great Vault isn't a simple case of rappelling down a cliff with your favorite grappling hook. The only viable way down is through a chaotic network of caverns, tunnels, and holes that twist and wind their way through the rock walls. These passageways are a mix of natural formations and old routes likely carved by ancient delvers, forgotten civilizations, and the local residents called the Narehate. Lurking in these tunnels and crevices is a whole ecosystem of wildlife ranging from harmless to extremely deadly. This layer is particularly famous for its aerial predators, most notably the Madokajacks. These flying fiends will absolutely swoop down and scoop you up if you're not careful. Then there's the Crimson Splitjaw. Yeah, that same nightmare noodle from the first layer. Turns out, it's strong enough to break into caves in this layer to go hunting. And let's not forget about the Amakagame, which dwells in the cave systems. They're not exactly hunting humans, but they can be a threat. Their main diet is the rodent-like Narehate, so humans aren't their go-to snack. Their stomach acid smells like Barakocha fruit, which Narehate love, so they basically weaponize scent as bait. The smell wafts through a hole in the top of their body and attracts unsuspecting prey, which then they swallow whole. Most of the inner caverns house non-aggressive residents, but there are exceptions. Every now and then, the Madokajacks decides to turn a large cave into a cozy nest. When you hit around the 6,750 meter mark, things get even weirder. The walls of the central shaft start sprouting spiky eggs stuck along the rock like someone went a little wild with nature's version of thumbtacks. These eggs hatch in a Kazura squid, which eventually drift down into the even more dangerous 4th layer, where they become part of that biome's aerial chaos. Now, let's talk about the curse. At this point, the Curse of the Abyss is really flexing. You don't just get the usual nausea and numbness from before. Now, you're dealing with vertigo, vomiting, visual and auditory hallucinations, and a general my brain is melting vibe. It's a full sensory breakdown waiting to happen, especially on the climb back up. But it's not all nightmares and hallucinations. The 3rd layer also offers up some pretty cool artifact called the Thinking Stone, which is used to make a tool called the Gentle Knock. Once calibrated to the user, the Gentle Knock can be mentally controlled. The tip morphs based on the user's thoughts and emotions. It has pincers that can force things open, and the control unit is tucked away on the opposite end. Very handy if you're stuck in a place where everything wants to kill you. There are also some quirky and ominous sounding points of interest down here, including the Barakocha corridors, Cumulonimbus Point, Rumbling Grounds of the Strong, Ghostly Roots, and the Talos Stone layer. And here's one last cool fact. Starting from this layer and counting deeper, the light in the abyss doesn't come from the surface anymore. It starts growing from below. Yup, the light from the lower layers is brighter than the sunlight above. That's your cue that the lower layers are crazier in any sense.
And really quick, if you enjoy these no-nonsense, straight-to-the-point videos covering all sorts of anime topics, then make sure to like this video and subscribe. But anyway.
4th layer. The 4th layer of the abyss, known as the Goblet of Giants, is where the line between breathtaking beauty and sheer physical horror is thinner than a fog weave thread. First things first, the Curse of the Abyss hits a whole new level here. Instead of just the nausea or hallucinations from earlier layers, now you're getting full body pain and bleeding from every orifice. So if you're heading down, pack some gauze and a high pain tolerance. The environment is like a fever dream of a rainforest, only everything wants to kill you. This place is packed with massive concave vine platforms called flat creepers. These enormous discs, we're talking 1 kilometer wide kind of enormous, stretch out across the layer, capturing water from the air and forming shallow natural pools. Only those pools are home to Orb Piercers, which are basically biomechanical porcupine nightmares, with a murder record longer than some wars. Orb Piercers are straight up terrifying. Each one claims an entire flat creeper as its turf, and they guard it like a paranoid landlord. Their venom is slow acting, but causes massive swelling and weakness. So much so that amputation becomes the best case scenario. And while they seem rare, their kill count is absurd. Over 100 Black Whistle Delvers have lost lives or limbs to just 1. And because of the high concentration of warm water and intense humidity, the whole layer feels like you're in a steamy greenhouse. Sometimes, the water vapor even creates a dense fog, which, combined with the refracted blue light from the force field, gives the area an eerie, otherworldly glow. Every 2,000 years, something truly wild happens. The flat creeper's prey-trapping abilities fade, and the canopy starts thinning, letting in more light. That triggers the lower plants to go berserk, race to grow taller, and dominate the landscape. Basically, the whole environment resets itself and turns into a completely new jungle. Because of this ever-changing layout, no one's even bothered trying to map this place out, aside from a few key landmarks. One such landmark is Nanachi's hideout, which is tucked away in a quiet spot far from the central shaft. It's special because it's practically free of the curse, making it one of the few safest zones in the entire layer. Then there's the Garden of Flowers of Resilience, found at a chilling 9,000 meters deep. This breathtaking field is filled with eternal fortunes, the signature flower of the abyss. They're beautiful, haunting, and symbolic, but unfortunately, beauty never comes without some lurking horror in the abyss. Enter the Amaranthine Deceptors, insects from the 6th layer that made their way up here. These bugs are sneaky devils. Their wings mimic eternal fortunes, letting them hide in plain sight, and when you get too close, they latch on, inject larvae, and turn your body into a mobile buffet for their babies. Now, onto the treasure, because even in this hellish jungle, there are reasons why delvers keep pushing forward. First up, there's the Fog Weave, a 3rd grade artifact that looks like a floating piece of mist. It's incredibly sensitive to movement, so light that even your breath can shift it. Nanachi used this to explain how the force field flows, since it behaves the same way, making it super useful for visualizing invisible death energy. Then there's the infamous Blaze Reap. This oversized pickaxe isn't just for mining, it's filled with something called peace phobia, which is basically the explode everything it touches setting. It smashes, it detonates, and it looks extremely cool while doing it. But the real crown jewel here is the Unheard Bell, a special grade artifact with straight up time-stopping powers. Here's how it works. It stops time for everyone except the user, within a radius defined by how loud the bell rings. The longer the sound reverberates, the longer time stays frozen. But here's the twist. The bell doesn't make any sound anyone else can hear. Only the user can hear the chime. Its waves don't behave like normal sound waves either. Liza and Ozen were the only ones who have managed to retrieve it. 5th layer. The 5th layer, ominously named the Sea of Corpses, marks a major threshold in the abyss. It's the final level from which delvers can realistically return to the surface with their sanity and humanity still intact. Because of the extreme risk, only black whistles and white whistles are permitted to venture this far, and even among them, survivors are few. Despite being only 1,000 meters deep, which is the shallowest layer vertically, it is also the widest, stretching out to a scale that dwarfs even the city of Orth by several magnitudes. The terrain is a sprawling frozen wasteland surrounding an eerie massive sea, hence the name. At the center of this layer lies a vast ancient sea filled with primeval creatures and the bones of long-dead life forms. But this isn't just any body of water. Beneath the visible surface, there's a thick slimy water layer that keeps the sea suspended, held in place by the abyss's mysterious force field. Scattered throughout are frost formations or large structures made of crystallized water. These can be temporary or permanent, the latter referred to as water bastions. One particularly important feature is a large central waterfall, which allows mail balloons from deeper layers to ascend through it, one of the few functional methods of vertical transport in the abyss. Here, the curse of the abyss manifests as extremely sensory deprivation. Victims lose awareness of their surroundings and bodily sensations. While ascending from this layer, delvers may not even notice that they've broken bones or suffered injuries. Riko herself once failed to realize that she had broken her own teeth, or tumbled downstairs while under its effects. Interestingly, the boundary between the 5th and 6th layers begins just below the sea's surface. Because of this, much of the sea technically overlaps with the 6th layer, while the 5th primarily contains the surrounding landmass, surface waters, and a major base of operations. At a depth of 13,000 meters, the deepest point above the sea, sits Ido Front, a forward operating base established by the infamous White Whistle Bondrewd. Originally an ancient ritual site, Ido Front now functions as a hub for exploration into the 6th layer. Powered by the constant rotation of a giant whirlpool, Ido Front includes the Altar of Absolute Boundary, an elevator-like mechanism that allows passage to lower layers. However, it only responds to life-reverberating stones, meaning that it can only be activated by specific white whistles, and even then, only by the stone's designated owner. The Sea of Corpses hosts both peaceful and deadly creatures. On the gentle side, we have species like the Hamashirama and the Monostela, but on the other end of the spectrum are the Stingerheads, giant seven-tailed scorpion-like predators. Standing over 2 meters tall, they are apex predators of the 5th layer. Each of their tails is filled with flesh-melting venom, and they're known for consuming the internal organs of their prey after liquefying them from within. One of the most haunting aspects of the 5th layer is the presence of Narehate, beings who have survived the curse of the 6th layer, but not without being physically or mentally altered. A lot of these tragic cases come out of Bondrewd's brutal experiments down at Ido Front. He used children as test subjects, transported them down into the 6th layer, and when they inevitably transformed into Narehate, he dumped them in a spot called the Miniature Garden of Dawn, like some twisted science fair reject bin. But there are exceptions. Mitty, for instance, is a special case. She's nearly indestructible, doesn't need food or water, and can shrug off any toxins like it's nothing. The 5th layer is rich with relics, many of which belong to Bondrewd's personal arsenal, including the Canopy Until Dawn, a set of armor designed to enhance combat efficiency. Far Caress, a relic that can manipulate countless tentacles. Gangway, which emits a beam of light that reflects and targets enemies. Shaker, made from cursed steel that inflicts the abyss's curse upon piercing. And Sporagmos, which generates a mysterious blade of energy. Other powerful artifacts found here include the life-reverberating stones, which are used to forge white whistles, the first grade artifact Third Works resembling a skeletal arm that becomes a functional exoskeleton of the user's body when connected, and the special grade artifact Zoholic that allows the user to spread their consciousness across multiple living beings. While incredibly powerful, this ability eventually fractures the user's mind and renders them invalid. 6th layer. We now dive into the 6th layer of the Abyss, aka the capital of the Unreturned. The name isn't just for dramatic flair, it's literal. Once a delver descends to this depth, they may never make it back. It's called the last dive for a reason. At around 15,500 meters deep, this place is the real point of no return. Now let's talk about the curse here. The 6th layer hits delvers with a level of suffering that's basically indescribable. If you try to ascend after reaching this depth, you don't just get a nosebleed or a headache, you mutate. Most people devolve into a writhing, mindless heap of flesh. All cognitive function gone. All that's left are the basest survival instincts. Sometimes people just die instead, which honestly might be the kinder option. In rare circumstances, there is a loophole. You might get off easy if someone else takes on the curse for you. Instead of turning into a fleshy horror, you keep your mind and get a funky new body with animal-like traits like fur or claws. Bondrewd calls this the blessing. The only 2 confirmed cases of this bizarre phenomenon are Nanachi and Bondrewd himself. Now, about the terrain. This place is home to the ruins of an ancient city-sized civilization that's just sleeping under layers of time. It might even be the legendary Golden City whispered about in Orth. Though it's called golden, the whole place is coated in a strange crystalline substance. No one's sure if the city was built that way or fossilized over time. Either way, the ruins are wild, tilted, upside down, sideways, like a broken snow globe scattered across the abyss. As you might expect, extremely dangerous creatures are everywhere. The further you go, the more bizarre and deadly things get. Somewhere in this chaos, the village of Iruburu stands out as a dark fairy tale. Iruburu is home to a special type of Narehate, which is totally different from Bondrewd's failed experiments back in the 5th layer. These villagers chose to become Narehate thanks to an artifact called the Cradle of Desire. Once transformed, they're bound to the village for life. They can't leave, but in return, they get physical form shaped by their deepest wishes, plus the village's protection. There's even a subspecies of Narehate called Juso, who are born as Narehate rather than transformed. Outside the village, the landscape doesn't get any friendlier. There are jagged ruins, treacherous cliffs, and fields of eternal fortunes. You'll also find the habitat of the Emperor Shell, a massive armored creature living past the 14,000 meter mark, where flaming iron rain casually pours from above. If you head roughly 300 meters shy of the 7th layer, you'll stumble across an outpost run by the Hail Hex Delvers, led by Srajo, one of the White Whistles. There's also a landmark there called the Eye, a mysterious place marking the boundary between the 6th and 7th layers. As for the local fauna, some of the terrifying residents include the amaranthine deceptors, Pseudowater, a parasitic liquid that slowly turns its victims into stone, and the terminid dragons, whose poisonous scales double as armor plating. Because this layer is completely cut off from everything else above it, it's teeming with strange life forms and dangerous relics that no one's cataloged yet. And that brings us to the artifacts, including the Cradle of Desire, which infuses to the users and grants their wishes, the Mermaid Bird, which creates gas, and the Popple Gun, which fires popping fodder that explodes like a shotgun blast. 7th layer. The 7th layer, also called the Final Maelstrom, is the deepest known part of the Abyss, and it's where things really start feeling less like an ecosystem and more like a fever dream wrapped in a cryptid mystery novel. Not much is known about this layer, and that's not just dramatic exaggeration. According to Srajo, the only official record of the curse of the 7th layer comes from a sealed letter discovered all the way back in the 1st layer, and that was 250 years ago. That's the only documented instance of the curse here. Whatever else is known about this place is passed down in total secrecy, through verbal transmission only, from one White Whistle to another. No written records, no academic papers, just cryptic warnings from few who made their last dive and never returned. Among these many strange rumors is talks of a mysterious artifact called the Ring of Essence. Only a select few White Whistles are said to have seen it, and its purpose is still a big question mark. Along with that, there are claims of powerful enigmatic entities called the Gatekeepers said to lurk somewhere along the descent to the bottom. And it gets weirder. Faputa, through her bond with the soul in Liza's White Whistle named Donnie, managed to confirm the existence of both the Ring of Essence and a mysterious, still unidentified being that has some connection to Reg. Now, let's talk environment. There's this bizarre current of super cold gas that snakes along the force field's bands. It's cold enough to frost anything it touches, which gives the whole layer this eerie glimmering vibe. Combine that with heavy rain and surprisingly lush vegetation, and it feels like the Abyss just threw the rest of the food chain out the window and started fresh. The landscape itself is a chaotic patchwork of cliffs, floating land bridges, and twisting cave systems that doesn't follow traditional physics. Then there's this phenomenon called Kachaba, which straight up disables your senses. It's like the Abyss decides that you don't need to hear, see, smell, or feel anymore. And if you think you'll be lonely in here, you're wrong. Say hello to the mysterious beast, the 7th layer's most famous and fearsome resident. This creature can gobble up a full-grown human like it's nothing. It hides by manipulating your senses, including the ability to block detection via the force field itself, so it's basically invisible unless it wants to be seen. But that's not all. It can regenerate incredibly fast, shrugging off damage like it was a boss. It even uses the force field to fly, navigating in full 3D space like the curse doesn't even apply to it. Oh, and remember that blue pendant Rico found back when she discovered Reg after their run-in with the Crimson Splitjaw? That trinket is heavily implied to have originated from the 7th layer. Reg sees it in a flashback while in this layer, held by an enigmatic figure referred to only as Girl Type. Who this unknown figure is, what their connection is to Reg, and why that pendant matters, those are all threads waiting to be unraveled.